Going live. So I hope it would tell us, number of viewers down here on the bottom if people actually start joining. So we have one viewer, but that one viewer might be me because I logged in with a second incognito window to just
to check see what's going on. I don't have any visibility into that. Is that through the control room functionality that you're able to see that?
Probably, yeah. It's right beside the big button that says start and stop.
Yeah, no, I mean I don't currently have control, so it's all you at this point.
It says we got 3 viewers now, so
okay.
Yeah, let's start. So, if you are watching, welcome to our first DEERE webinar. This is a bit of a test to see if this is going to work for everybody, and to see if this is a format that works going forward. We understand that we didn't give many people much heads up before the event today at lunch and tonight for the social. Yeah, we're working through issues with APEC BC and trying to figure out how to engage our membership a little bit better and how to give them more advanced notice to what we're planning for everybody. So that said, I don't want to take up too much time, and we'll get over to Matt Harper, who will talk about grid energy storage. Yeah, I'll let Matt, you introduce yourself.
Awesome, thanks a lot, Cody. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes.
All right, perfect, great. Cool. So just a little overview of who I am. I serve as the vice chair of DEERE, and so I'm in the exciting position to be the guinea pig for our webinar series here. My name is Matt Harper. I've been working in the renewable energy space for about 20 years now, and in the battery world for about the last 10 years. First with a company called VRB Power Systems, starting in 2005, and then more recently with a company called Prudent Energy, and then on to Avalon Battery about a year ago. about 2 years ago. Avalon was formed by a couple of my former colleagues in some of the other companies I've worked with, specifically looking at building battery products for some very specific markets, some of which I'll talk to you about today. What I wanted to do today is sort of give you guys an overview of sort of our view of grid-connected energy storage and where we see markets evolving for that. It's a very sort of commercial and applications-focused presentation. So I'm not going to sort of get into the details of how you design a battery because I think that fundamentally we all sort of understand that batteries are a thing that accepts and rejects electrons. And of course there are lots of nuances in how you do that. But I think what I really wanted to do was sort of give you guys the background for the motivation for doing that in a sort of grid-connected application scenario, and then just touch on some of the technical characteristics right at the end. So with that said, let me launch into this presentation. And Cody, if I could just get you to confirm that you see this first slide, okay?
Yep, looks good.
Awesome, great. Okay, so a little bit of just an overview of what I'm going to try and run through in the next sort of 35 to 40 minutes or so. Just an overview of sort of our view of why storing electrical energy matters. Some of the applications that we seek to serve and the ones that we think are really beneficial and kind of how we sort of divide those up. Get into a little bit about commercialization, how you take one of these batteries and apply them to problems that individual users are sort of willing to pay for as an early step towards a sort of broader rollout of these products. I'll talk a little bit about metrics. It's the old question of lies, damn lies, and statistics. And the flip side of that is that there are liars, damn liars, and battery salesmen. This is the thing that I learned at the first battery conference I ever went to back in 2006. So, lots of interesting discussion on the sort of metrics of measurement side. Then I'll give you guys sort of a quick tour of some of the industry players. I don't really, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on sort of a blow-by-blow detail of who's doing what in the industry, but just give you a quick sense of some of the existing and emerging technologies, and then I'll just give you guys 2 or 3 slides on sort of who Avalon is and what we're doing. So without further ado, the major question here is why store electrical energy? And the thing, whenever I'm approached by someone and they say, what do you do? And I start around what a grid-connected battery really does. I say, imagine a world where we needed to consume water the instant it fell from the sky. That's essentially where our electrical energy system is today. You need to a large degree around the world. There is no way of sort of managing this dispatchability of those electrons. Once they're generated, they need to be used. And the way I sort of frame it is that we're kind of in the Roman amphora stage of building the a wide rollout of the grid scale electrical energy storage. The project you see at the right is something that I was responsible for over the last 5 years or so, which is a 4 megawatt-hour battery that was installed down right around Los Angeles. At the time, this was a huge plant and a big effort, and was the largest flow battery in the world at the time. But it is a minuscule drop in the bucket in terms of the potential of energy storage overall. So we really sort of are in the early stages. But the bottom line is that once to extend that water analogy, once you get the notion that you can actually store and manage a resource like this, you open up all sorts of different avenues for being able to redistribute and buffer and manage how you operate that resource. So what do we do? So the immediate question is, who cares? So you can capture this stuff and that's all wonderful, but why would we even want to try and do that at great effort and expense? Well, there are kind of two worlds in the markets for powering electrical devices by batteries, and I'm not talking about things like electric cars and and our watches and cell phones, which are things that you can sort of, that are kind of portable. But in the world of stationary power, there's really two worlds, and one is situations where you're connected to the grid, and the other is situations where you're off grid. And many of you will have at some point in your lives visited remote cabins or remote communities, or especially in BC, there's a lot of remote communities that essentially generate their own power on a very localized microgrid. That's an application that is very interesting and exciting for battery technologies, but it's not what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be focusing primarily on the first of those two categories, which is the applications that these batteries can serve when connected to a broad scale electricity grid. So in those sort of grid systems, and this is very much a sort of, a lot of the pioneering work on this has been done out of the U.S. And this is a slide that's applicable primarily to the U.S., but largely because it is based on the research that's been done by some of the national labs and national research institutes down there. But essentially, there was kind of a pioneering study about 3 or 4 years ago that attempted to look at energy storage and say, when connected to the electrical grid, what value could that device deliver? And some of these will be familiar to you guys, some of them won't. But essentially, there are a number of grid-based services that electrical energy storage can provide, and there are a number of markets that a battery, even as it exists today, could bid into. Things like now, if you sort of run down this list, I'll just give you a quick snapshot of some of these. I mean, and what this graph is showing is essentially the potential market size that could be served by energy storage in this grid connected application again in the US, and then the question of what is the value that battery delivers in that particular application. So when the first time people ask me about what to do with one of these batteries, often they'll talk about, oh, I get it, so I'll buy cheap electricity overnight and then be able to sell it back during the day, and that's exactly the first and later down this list, the sort of orange bar shows, essentially that sort of time of use arbitrage, where you're trying to buy electricity cheaply, or when there's an excessive availability at comparatively low cost, and then dispatch it back in the peak time of day when there's more energy demand on the grid. Things like capacity, load following, area regulation, voltage support. These are all sort of generally come into the bucket of what people refer to as ancillary services. Sometimes these are contracted services that are provided by an entity to an independent system operator. Sometimes these are things for which there is a discrete market. So for example, the sort of short-term sort of spinning reserves market would fall into some of these categories. But in general, they're different. There are different applications to which you can apply the battery, and different scenarios under which they can be valuable. The top half of this graph is sort of everything from energy time shift down to substation. Is really looking at the value from the grid operator or from an integrated utilities perspective. For example, T&D deferral and substation. I mean, those things are really just a way of using the battery to sort of eliminate some of the bottlenecks inside the electric system. Whereas everything sort of from time of use energy down is more sort of time of use energy through to sort of power quality. That's really from the end user's perspective. So this is value that someone could if they were operating their own facility, those are some of the value they could get from being able to manage essentially the flow of electricity onto their individual site. And then the last two, sort of the wind integration and some of the renewables firming, really what that's talking about is looking at what an independent generator who is contracting to sell electricity onto the grid would be able to benefit from. So the reason I kind of walk through those is because and there's been a lot of people have looked at this in great detail, and the problem that I see with this analysis is that there's any commercial product, to make a commercial product, you need to find who's willing to buy it and what value is it to them, and none of these things are sort of categorized in this way. So one of the things that we've done, and jumping on to the next slide, I can take a look at this, is sort of taking those different pieces of value and breaking them up and asking two questions. First of all, what part of an organization is it that cares about this capability? Is it the people who are responsible for managing capital investments, or is it people who are actually running a business day to day and need to be able to try and optimize those costs? So splitting those two up, then we can sort of look at the different types of companies that would benefit from this, and some of the categories are listed here. So a conventional energy generator, they're going to be more interested in energy time shift. So being able to sell the energy when it's more valuable, and also some of the power quality issues, things like ramp control, where they want to be able to use the energy storage to manage the rate of change of their plant's output as a way of optimizing that plant's performance. I won't go through every one of these, but the one that I'll talk about, because we'll be talking about a little bit later on, is the industrial customer. And on the customer side of a meter, there's a lot of value that you can draw in from one of these batteries. Not only can you optimize when you're buying the electricity, so you can buy it at a lower rate than you might otherwise do, but you can also use a battery as a way of managing the flow onto an individual site. So managing power quality in terms of voltage regulation, power factor. Not so much voltage regulation, more power factor correction, but also looking at managing some of the demand charges that a lot of utilities are starting to charge. Primarily, down in the States, the demand charges have become a big deal. But even up here in DC, that's one of the ways that industrial and commercial customers are starting to charge. Moving on then. So just a deeper dive into, again, I'm looking at those sort of industrial customers. So let's just sort of do more of a dive into that to see, how storage can help manage loads. And what I'm showing here in the top two graphs are a couple of daily load profiles. So you're looking at about 24 hours of electricity usage. For two different site types. The one on the left is an office building, and the one on the right is an automotive repair shop. And both of them have a significant solar resource installed. The office building on that graph, the solar generation is shown in that sort of fairly smooth orange graph. This site is about a mile off the beach just south of LA, and they've got a very, very consistent solar resource. So you see a nice smooth curve there. The automotive repair shop, on the other hand, is located up in Sonoma County, north of San Francisco, where they get a lot of fog. They get a lot of overcast days. So the solar resource is not only quite a bit smaller, but it's also a lot more varied. But the important thing to notice in these is that the application for the energy storage is quite different. On the right-hand side, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to manage the two peaks you see in the purple curves, and this is what this particular customer refers to me as the devil horns, because this is the time of day when the facility power consumption has started to increase, but the solar generation hasn't really come online yet to be able to supplement that consumption. But what that means is that there's about a 2-hour period in the morning and a 2-hour period in the early evening, where those periods are really setting your peak consumption for the day, and it's that peak consumption that you end up getting charged for under these demand charge regimes. So that's something that they would dearly like to manage, but without having some way of storing excess energy and shaving off those devil horns, there's not much that you can do. On a site like the automotive repair yard on the right, I mean, this is the scenario with this repair yard is that they've got a couple of very large loads, things like air compressors and whatnot, that switch on for a fairly short period of time. So you see that the overnight load in this facility is very, very low. Everyone shows up for work sometime between sort of 5:30 and 7 in the morning, and that's when your load goes through the roof. And then over the course of the day, as things like air compressors are switching on, they've got a big paint booth on this site that is going to be switching on and off and taking a pretty big load. You see this extremely stochastic load pattern where you've got huge variation over the course of the day. So in this scenario with the battery, would try and do something a little bit different. It's trying not so much to do a bulk shift of energy either in the morning or the afternoon, but it's trying to shave off a number of individual peaks over the course of the day. So whereas in the office building you're doing sort of two kind of bulk discharges all at once, morning and evening. In the remote this repair yard application, you're doing some very, very short high power outputs sequentially over the course of the day. The graph at the bottom is basically showing what the effect of this battery would be, and this data is for that automotive repair yard. So you can see that and this is almost a year's worth of daily site peak load data. And so you can see on the left-hand side, there are a number of days where they're hitting peaks of, in most days it's sort of in the 70 to 80 kilowatt range. Often it's up around 100 kilowatts. So those are the peaks that the utility is charging for. On the right-hand side, this is the simulation of what would happen if you had that battery installed as well. So essentially, we're trying to keep the load flow on the site at about 50 kilowatts. And what that means is that we can dramatically reduce the demand charges that these guys in particular are paying. This next slide shows dives into a little bit more detail. It shows a bit of a sort of graphic representation of how does bulk energy storage shift consumption over long periods. And so this is what each one of these three graphs is showing is sort of top to bottom is a full year, so January through December, of 365 days worth of energy usage. And then going from left to right, what you're seeing is, essentially midnight through the day until midnight again. So 24 hours of energy usage. So every one of the cells in this grid represents, a 1 hour period over the course of an entire year. And we use this as a way of visualizing what's going on an individual site. So, looking at that leftmost panel, you see that clearly it's sort of at 6 a.m. every day. So overnight loads are pretty low. Oh, sorry, and I should mention that deeper blue is a higher level of power consumption. So what's going on here is people are showing up for work at pretty regularly, 6 a.m. every day. In fact, it looks like it's a little bit too regularly, but they probably have some sort of equipment that's automatically switching on at that time. And then over the course of the day, the facility is drawing load to be able to execute their daily operations. You can see that their weekend loads are a little bit lower. There's sort of a regular low point every 5 or 6 days. And then, what's really interesting is you get into the summer period, you see much higher loads in the afternoon, which is usually indicative of a fairly high air conditioning load. But, what's really interesting about this side is, as soon as you get into mid-September, there's this huge amount of energy consumption that starts, runs all the way through the day and even runs overnight. And the reason for this is a winery, and that's their harvest time. So what they're doing is they're pulling, from daybreak every day, they're pulling grapes in off of the field, and they've got to get them very cold, and they've got to get them processed right away, and that takes up a huge amount of energy. So there's a lot you can tell by just looking at this sort of this very tight snapshot of this one facility's operation. The two panels to the left, so the center and then off to the right, are essentially looking at that same site and layering in first what you would see if you added about a fairly large solar array to this site. And then over on the right is if you added a solar array plus a battery. So essentially what that battery is doing in this scenario, so without the PV array, you've got a peak electricity usage of about 610 kilowatts. With the PV array in place, you're generating a huge number of kilowatt hours off of that PV array. In fact, you're generating more than the site uses in the entire year. But your actual peak consumption hasn't really changed all that much because the PV generation and the battery, or sorry, the site load are not coincident with one another. So you're not really doing anything to address the peak loads by having that PV resource on site. Moving over to the right-hand pane, what we've done there is we've put that battery in place as a way of managing those peak loads. And essentially what that battery allows you to do is to get that peak load down to around 400 kilowatts, which saves a huge amount of money in terms of the demand charges that this customer would end up paying. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about this particular site a little bit later in this presentation. So with that, that's sort of the application scenario that we typically look at is these industrial, often PV coupled sites that have significant energy usage and significant demand charges coming their way. But I think it's worth it, asking the question, kind of what got us in that particular direction. And the way we think about commercialization is I always think about it in sort of this micro versus macro view. And there's a gentleman named Peter Thiel, who some of you may be familiar with. He's sort of a venture capitalist, entrepreneur type guy who recently wrote a book called 0 to 1. And if any of you guys are interested in the world of startups, I strongly recommend it. But he had this quote. He says that an entrepreneur can't benefit from macro scale insight unless his own plans begin with micro scale. And in energy storage in general, a huge amount of work has been done at the macro scale, and it's been a lot of the European think tanks, a lot of the American research labs have been really leading that charge. And it's phenomenal work, and it has resulted in some really interesting regulatory changes, some really interesting cost incentives that have been proposed in the U.S. There's some really good things that have come out of that, but you can't make a business out of macro scale insights because no one pays the bills at the macro scale. I guess arguably the government does, but it's really hard to make a business case based on those sort of system-wide or economy-wide insights. So what we do is we say, okay, well, what is the micro view? And what we do is we sort of dive right down into what individual customers are paying to see how these capabilities can actually help them address real pain points in their everyday business. And this is where we started. This is how we really started focusing on this notion of demand charges. So this is what you see on the left-hand side is an actual bill. This is from a what are they there? It's a small scale hospital, essentially, just outside of San Francisco. Managed care facility, I think they call it. They don't have an operating room, that sort of thing, but it's more of a residential setting. Anyway, the point being that this is a site that has a fairly flat load profile. But about 35% to 40% of their bill is going into paying for these demand charges. So, to the degree that they can optimize the flow that goes into their site on a day-to-day basis or a monthly basis, they can cut a huge amount of what they're paying out of their individual bills. We look a lot at projects that either have or are contemplating having a significant solar PV resource in place. And the reason for that is twofold. Simply, first of all, there's really good access. PV guys do a lot of work, upfront work in their projects in assessing, the load profiles of individual sites and really trying to sort of work through the economics of how those sites work out. Us being able to piggyback off of that is really beneficial. But when you look at sort of the resulting economics, there's this really interesting sort of 1 + 1 = 3 equation where having energy storage on top of an individual PV array allows you to manage or to optimize both your demand charges in terms of the dollars per kilowatt that you're charged, and the energy charges in terms of the net amount of kilowatt hours that you're paying for. You can optimize those two things in a way that is really beneficial in terms of the overall amount that people are paying. these demand charges are, they're not a new thing, but they certainly have become a lot more important in the last couple of years and a lot more painful to some of their customers. Essentially, this is an analysis looking at demand charges in California, because that's one of the major markets we're looking at. And what you see is that nothing on the left, demand charges are going up, and it's something like 12 to 15% average year over year, whereas the energy charges, so the dollars per kilowatt hour, are staying comparatively flat. For a lot of customers, those demand charges are 20 to 50% of their utility bill, and that amount goes way up once you have a significant solar PV array installed. And the way we will look at these individual projects is to sort of say, what is the ratio of the peak energy load to the average daily load. And if you've got a very high peak to average ratio, that's usually an indication that there's a good opportunity to be able to manage that electricity flow overall, and it creates a good situation for a battery solution. In terms of this, this one market, and this is more a statement of our company's focus rather than anything, but we think that the market in California is about a $5 billion opportunity, so what we're really trying to address is giving solar PV installers the tools to be able to manage those charges, and basically give them an additional service offering that they can bundle with their product, that will allow them to propose something to their customers that is more valuable overall. Therefore, hopefully building their book of business as well as ours.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
We're having some technical difficulties here.
Okay.
I'm able to see your presentation, but other people aren't. So
okay.
I'm trying to figure this out here.
Okay.
Just now, you switched over to your webcam. Did you do that on purpose, or I wonder if we can try to reshare the presentation and see if that might address it.
So the reason I switched over to my webcam was just because I moved from the presentation window out to something else, but hold on. Do you see that? Do you see that slide now?
So I'm seeing it. I've got another window here showing the live feed, but it's a couple seconds behind here. So let's see.
Because I've got a little bar that says Google Hangouts is sharing your screen with plus.google.com.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, this is why we have guinea pigs, right?
Yep, exactly.
It's still not working for people. What's going on here?
It's too small though, you might break it. Okay.
People are telling me on the spot that it's still not working. So my webcam seems to have worked there. Why is this not working? Sorry, everyone. Trying to figure this out. I wonder if I can try to share my screen. Says Matt Harper is presenting. I see it on my screen, but I also see that other people are not seeing it. So I don't know what else we can do at this point.
Are you guys seeing? Tell you what, Cody, why don't we? If the attendees are online and can hear me, why don't you enter your email address into the comments box, and I will send you a PDF copy of this presentation, and then we can keep walking through it.
Actually, that could be a good idea. I might be able to just invite them directly to being on the Hangout. There's only a handful of people. So
okay, sure. Why don't you try that first?
Let me try that.
Yeah, because unfortunately this is about a 15 megabyte file, so it's going to take me a little while to transmit.
Okay. Let's see. Are you not sharing anything at all right now, Matt?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm not.
Okay.
Sorry, here, I'll go back to sharing.
Yeah, if you could try to just share your presentation, then I can keep tinkering around here and trying to make it work.
No, that didn't work. It's doing that thing again.
Yeah, maybe we should. I've invited everybody, but I don't know if anyone's seen the invite or what. So if you guys are watching, check your inbox. See if you can join the Hangout. Okay, nobody seems to be joining through the direct method. I think maybe we should just fix some of our technological difficulties here and maybe reschedule for a couple weeks from now. And you can try to give everybody a little bit more heads up notice by then as well.
Sure. Okay. Tell you what. I mean, we've only got 20 minutes. I know we've got Dorota online because she just emailed me her email address. Why don't I send this out to the two of you guys, and then we can at least plow through the last sort of 15, 20 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, everyone's still listening and everyone's still online. So
okay.
Let's try that. You might be able to post a link in the main page too. Nobody seems to be looking at that though, so maybe that won't work. Yeah, good call.
Okay, Cody and Dorota, you should have that. You should have that email any minute. It's just sent. If there's anyone else online still, sorry, I've lost the little box where I was able to see comments. Mm-hmm. Bengal, do we still have you online? If so, if you want to send me your email address, I'll get that presentation over you right away. Okay, Cody. Well, can you just monitor that? If we get anyone else requesting that presentation, can you forward it on to them? And then what I'll do is I'll just carry on and we'll keep going.
Seamus is already also watching online, so I'll send it over to him too.
Great. Oh, I can. I can do that. I've got it. I've got it already loaded. So.
Okay.
Seamus. Of course, it's an email. Okay, good. All right, great. So let's just let's carry on then. So let me skip back to this screen share. So we were on slide 14. So slide 14 gets to this question of you know we think we have a reasonable justification for why people would want to buy one of these batteries, but you know what we had to prove to ourselves in terms of sort of building our initial business plan, and then also you know every time we go talk to an individual customer is you know the question of you know what difference does it make to them? You know, why would someone you know take money out of their business in order to invest in one of these things? And so essentially what we did is we looked at a couple of different case studies. And this is, we talked about that automotive repair a little bit earlier. That's what this site is. So, you know, they've got about a little over 100 kilowatt peak demand, 160 megawatt hours a year of energy consumption. They already had 110 kilowatt PV installed. And what they were finding is that, you know, even though they were originally paying about $22,000 a year in their total electrical bills, they thought that the PV would get rid of like 80 to 90% of that, but really it only dropped their bills by about 40% because of these demand charges that they were still paying. You know, what we were able to do was propose a fairly small battery, 40 kilowatt 2-hour or 80 kilowatt hour battery. Which would allow them to switch to a tariff where they would not have those demand charges being paid, and thereby reducing their bill to a fraction of what it was before. That would allow them to pay back the battery itself within less than 2 years, and generate better economics for the solar project over time overall. Second case study we looked at, or that I'll talk a little bit about today, was a little bit of a larger system. This is a light manufacturing facility. These guys actually make custom molded motorbike engine components. A little bit higher demand, 600 kilowatts, but a much larger solar array. This was sort of a 960 kilowatt PV array that they were proposing that would generate almost 100% of the annual energy consumption required in this particular site. The problem here was because of the load profile that they were on. They had a hard time getting a reasonable payback out of the PV array, and what the battery was able to do was reduce that 605 kilowatt peak demand down to around 450 kilowatts. That again would allow them to save a lot of money on the demand side, while not costing them any more money on the energy consumption. Energy bills in this situation go down to almost just the system access fees, basically the meter fee, and what that does is that it took the payback for the entire project, including the PV array, from around 9 years down to around 5 years by including that extra battery. In round numbers, the battery on the site, and for most of the projects we look at, is really only about 20 to 30% of the overall investment in the solar plus battery system. So if you can double the economic benefit of that combined system with a component that costs only about 20% of the total, obviously your overall project economics are getting a lot better. The third example I'll give you guys, and this is that winery we looked at earlier with some of the year-over-year solar data, and actually, just for sake of because you guys didn't see it before, let's just skip back to slide 8 briefly. This is the one where I was talking about, where we're sort of looking at, every one of the cells in these tables is the consumption over not 24 hours of the day from left to right, and then 365 days of the year from top to bottom in each one of those charts. So jumping back to slide 14, I mean, sorry, 16. In this particular winery, they've only got peak loads for a few months of the year, but because of the way the tariff structures are organized, that means that even though their load is only comparatively high a few months of the year, they still end up having to pay a fair amount of demand charges. So very similar solution. This is I don't know if you can think back to those graphs we looked at, but the peaks on this system are comparatively broad. So that's it's if you're going to try and reduce the overall energy flowing onto site, you have to do that over sort of a large number of hours. So it's what we usually call a 4-hour system, or a 170 kilowatt, 820 kilowatt hour battery that we proposed. And again, it's similar outcomes. In this case, it was a finance deal, but so there wasn't so much of a payback period. But the utility bills dropped by almost 80% from year one, and from year one we're getting significantly positive cash flow back to the customer. Moving on to some of the metrics that we look at when trying to assess these technologies. So on slide 18, the first one is capital costs, and this is usually the thing that people talk about when you're proposing a battery. And the important point to make here is that there's a lot of different components that you need in order to actually deliver value out of one of these things. You need to look at not just the battery cells themselves, but the pack that connects those cells together, all of the sort of management systems, and support structures that go around those, power conversion devices, because you've got to take DC power of the battery and turn it into useful AC current, and then all of the sort of interconnection and retail margins and installation that's required to actually get the project in the ground. On slide 19, moving on, the challenge is that the numbers that get reported vary all over the industry, and you guys have probably heard announcements from companies like Tesla that are talking about their new energy storage products, and they're that are very compelling price point. Their price point is about $430 a kilowatt hour, but the challenge is that that's a price for the cells, the battery pack, and a very sexy enclosure, but it doesn't do anything in terms of actually delivering useful power on a grid connected site. You need to get your conversion devices in there. Your controls need to be included. The retail margins to whoever's going to install this thing are also important. So there's a lot. You need to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples when you sort of price out some of these different technologies against one another. I hear all the time about new entrants into the market who say that they're going to make an energy storage device at $100 a kilowatt hour, or $200 a kilowatt hour, or whatever it is. The reality is that we're really not that far off of that right now, provided what you're looking at is the storage technology at the cell level itself. But that storage technology at the cell level doesn't get you anywhere in terms of actually making money off one of these. So you need to look at sort of the full install cost in order to make sure that put this at the cost of value delivery at the point where you're delivering that value, which is the customer's meter, in order to really compare these things against one another. One of the other metrics I hear a lot of people discuss is LCOE, or the levelized cost of energy, and I think this is really a holdover from the solar industry primarily. In the solar industry, LCOE is a huge deal because it's a very capital-intensive technology, less so now as prices are falling. But historically, it's been very capital-intensive, and so people want to look at the levelized cost in terms of dollars per kilowatt hour of energy flowing out of one of these devices. In terms of where we come on LCOE, we think that we're about $180 a megawatt hour, which is better than a lot of energy storage technologies out there, but which is still higher than what a lot of people are calling for in terms of the long run cost of these things. The point I want to make, though, is that with, with an energy storage technology, the levelized cost matters less, and it's because in every battery installation, it is the application of the battery that dominates the LCOE calculation. And skipping on to slide 21, I can give you guys sort of a sense of this. I mean, some of them, four of the major inputs into an LCOE calculation are the cost of capital, the upfront cost of the equipment. For a battery, there's a percentage efficiency question. How much energy do you get back out for what you put in? There's a question of the amount of money you're paying for the electricity to charge the battery. So it's the dollars per kilowatt hour charge. But then there's this thing called a capacity factor, and the capacity factor for a battery, unlike solar, which sort of sits there and absorbs sun whenever it's able to, for a battery, the capacity factor or the number of hours per year you're actually going to use that battery are completely dependent on the application that you're trying to serve. And so you can see that if you're in applications where you see a battery used less and less, the LCOE goes through the roof. And I think the thing to consider here is that the Tesla Powerwall, the thing that everyone in energy storage is all hot and bothered about right now, has a very, very high LCOE, and which is absolutely fine. This is a great product, and they're gonna do extremely well commercially. But the point is that the LCOE by itself, unless you understand the application that the battery's trying to serve, really is not a great measure. And I'll slide 22. I'll give you just another example of how that's true. And this just gets to the fallibility of individual metrics. I mean, both of these two devices, these are internal combustion engines. So to the first order of magnitude approximation, these are identical products. Both of them burn gasoline to make energy. But the one on top costs you $200 a horsepower, and the one on the bottom costs you $26 a horsepower. The difference is that they're designed to serve completely different applications. But what's worth noting is that they both commercially are very, very successful products. There have been huge numbers of these things built over the years, and the companies that have been building them are very, very successful. So, translating back into the battery world, it's critically important to look at things like duty cycle, to look at the lifetime of these products, and to look at the application that you're trying to serve in order to determine whether these batteries are really valuable. So a little bit on us and sort of how we do things. On slide 24, this is sort of a conceptual sketch of how we're delivering our product. One of the things that we realized when we founded this company is that in order to be able to make a product that is successful in the solar market, we needed to have something that was very scalable, very much plug and play, and sort of would be easily understood by people in the solar industry who would be going to install it. So what we've done is we took a technology that has been primarily applied at the very, very large scale. You saw that picture earlier of one of the other projects I've worked on, which was literally a 6,000 square foot industrial plant, and shrunk that down into a small form factor single unit that can be delivered off the back of the truck, hooked up by any electrician out of the phone book, and up and running within a very few hours. The reason that the solar guys like this is because it's a close analogy to what they've done. It's a single unit that you can install into a sort of a highly modular array based on the characteristics of an individual site, so that you can get sort of something that's highly optimized and you can really fit for purpose without having to do a lot of upfront customization. Some of the key metrics on the performance of this device itself. This is a 10 kilowatt, 25 kilowatt hour battery. The efficiency on a system like this is about 80% at the cell level or 70% at the system level. The difference between those two is primarily in the conversion from AC to DC power. And we say that these things will have a lifetime of 10 years. Realistically, I mean, one of the things about a flow battery is that you need to think about maintaining it much less like a conventional battery cell, where you sort of use it until it's done and then you throw it away or recycle it. And you can think about it more like a car, where you're doing a number of maintenance steps on a fairly small number of components over time. So, you know, we say 10 years, you know, and that's just based on the, you know, the life that we've been able to test in our individual labs. You know, we think overall, once we get more experience with it, and once we get some more regimented maintenance procedures in place, that window is going to stretch out to more like 20 to 25 years. On to the next slide. So, you know, what is it about this vanadium flow battery which is the technology we're working with that's so great? Well, it's, you know, there's a lot of advanced technology batteries out there. This is one that has been installed at a number of sites all over the world. We've done about, you know, we and some of the countries that we've been related with in the last 10 years have done something like 42 megawatts worth of installations of this battery all over the world. It's got a really good combination of both calendar and cycle life. So, you know, one of the things that you see in other battery technologies is that, you know, they may be very, very stable over time, but they can't do a lot of charge and discharge cycles. Or conversely, they can do a lot of charge-discharge cycles, but, you know, they tend to wear out after a small number of years. The vanadium battery sort of combines those two things together. The operation of these batteries is very safe and stable. You know, one of the things that we've done is things like short circuit tests, and in every one of those cases, the battery essentially is not damaged at all by, you know, very, very high short-term currents. You know, this graph on the lower left-hand side is where we took a 125 amp battery and short-circuited it to get 1200 amps out of it for a very short period of time. Once that energy was completely run out of the battery through that short circuit, we were able to recharge the battery and put it back into normal operational straight away. The final characteristic is that you know, these things can provide both short and long-term power. So this is you know, these two graphs to the lower right. One is a switch from charge to discharge, happens over about 10 milliseconds. So, you know, you can serve, you know, really like we talked much earlier on sort of about some of the power quality applications. You can definitely do that with this battery. And then the other one is just showing how stable the output is over time. So half-long discharge at a very, very stable power level. So, you know, you've got a very broad ability to serve a number of varying site characteristics or application types with this battery. On slide 26, this is just some of the projects that we've been involved with. Now, obviously, Avalon is a comparatively new company, you know, looking at repackaging these technologies for specific markets. These are projects that were all done by myself and my colleagues, but not as Avalon. So, you know, I'll put that in there as a caveat. These were either BRB Power Systems or Proven Energy where we installed these. But, you know, it's the same core technology and it's the same people developing it. So, you know, we sort of hold these out as examples of what we worked on in the past. Slide 28, I'll give you guys a really quick look at this. You know, this is sort of some of the industry players. You know, we think that in the specific application we're looking at, which is, you know, coupling solar PV projects to the grid, you know, we've got a really great product. The guys who are working with lithium, and that's, you know, Stem and Tesla, they have to have very, very large arrays, sort of 10,000 plus cells, in order to make those products operate properly, which is very difficult to do. And then, sort of moving further to the right, we get into some of the more advanced or sort of up and coming technologies, and they show great potential, but, you know, I think there's a question as to whether they're really going to be able to bring the technology to market in a sustainable way. And, you know, I sort of joke / cry that the road to modern energy storage is paved with the bones of companies that weren't able to make it. And actually, Enervolt, the one on this list, is one of those that they've just recently filed for bankruptcy because they weren't able to get their product cost down to, you know, what they believe the technology would be able to achieve. This is too bad because there's actually a Vancouver connection here. Enervolt had a lot of their engineering done here in Vancouver by a company called Noram. So it's, you know, it's really too bad to see them sort of fall apart. But, you know, the point is that, you know, there's you know, every day or every couple of days I get a new press release of some, you know, company that's come up with a new lower cost technology. Until you've seen one of these things deployed in the field for many, many years, it's really hard to judge, you know, whether those costs are actually real. And I would urge caution in taking a look at some of those newer developments. That's it. You know, obviously we've got some technical hiccups here, but I hope this was valuable. That email address at the bottom of slide 29, connect to Avalon battery. It's a generic email address, but it goes straight to my inbox. So you can contact me that way, or take out connect and put in mharper@avalonbattery.com, and you can reach me directly. I'd love to entertain any of your questions either in the next couple of minutes or over the next days and weeks. So please let me know, and thanks for your time.
Hey Matt, just while we're in here and experimenting and trying to make this work, if you could reload your screen, that seems to be something that's fixed the issue for other Hangout on Air users. All right, he's gone, and see if he comes back now. I may have just kicked him off the entire thing.
Hi, Cody, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. I see you, but I saw you before, so.
Okay, I just reloaded. Let me try this again.
There's about a 20-second delay before other people see what we've been doing, though. So you gotta.
Okay, so I'm back up on screen sharing, and I'm showing the final slide in that deck, which is the thank you screen.
Cool. Yeah, I see it, but I've seen everything so far.
Yeah.
Very frustrating.
Yeah.
So if anybody does have any questions, you can ask them in the Hangout here or on the Google Plus page as well. Will the recorded webinar be available in the future? Yes, this is directly being saved to YouTube, although it's going to be potentially just as awful as this technical difficulty has been. So, but you may be able to, if you get the PDF that Matt just sent around, I guess you could watch from the beginning and listen to what he was saying and flip through the slides manually. So, yes, I'll share that link around anyway.
Cody, do you have a list of attendees there?
I do.
Okay.
People have dropped off now, so we just have one viewer left right now.
Okay.
But it was Seamus and his group. I think Ben Gould was one of the people with Seamus.
Okay, great.
And Dorota.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, what we can do is we can check with them to see if they've got those materials after the fact, and we'll check on whether the YouTube link actually works. Because maybe it will be the screen, the slides actually did show up on YouTube. Who knows? Yeah,
that'd be frustrating and interesting at the same time.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Well, I guess I don't see any questions, so I guess that's it.
Yeah. So I'll send around the link and remind everybody of the social tonight, and hope to see people there.
Sure. Great. And I'll be there sometime around 5:30, 5:45.
Great.
Okay. Thanks, Cody. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.